I declared war on shame in my life. But in order to overcome those things and not try to overcompensate for them, we have to let them be exposed. We have to let them come into the light. Shame is a human experience. Every single one of us carry a measure of shame. How we project it, how we carry it, how we allow it to affect us and inform us varies. You cannot heal what you're not willing to be honest about. A lot of us are giving things to God that God doesn't want us to give to him. He actually wants to get in it and then get it out of us. Pride and shame are two sides of the same coin. So where some people might really struggle with shame, other people might present themselves as more prideful. We deceive ourselves. We defend ourselves. We blame others to justify ourselves, to try to protect ourselves from being honest with ourselves about the shame that we feel. When we experience shame, we armor ourselves up with all of these masks that we wear, all of these coping mechanisms that we use, because we don't want to feel that shame. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me so clearly in that moment, and he said, this is the healing journey. You cannot get to where you want to go if you don't know where you're starting. And here we are.
Here we are.
Here we go. I was telling Mariah that I was like finding every little excuse to put off hitting the record button today.
Yeah. Why? Why do you think that is?
I don't know, because every week it's a challenge. It's a vulnerable experience. And sometimes I come in and I'm like, I don't even know if I have anything to say. And then I always have plenty to say. But Mariah, how are you?
Currently, I'm nervous as well, but that's just the initial, just getting on and getting it going. But overall, the week has been really beautiful. I've spent a lot of good time with my family, with you yesterday, and God's always in it. But yeah.
I was telling my mom this morning, shout out to my mom, Linda Tipsherani. We love you. Because she listens to every podcast episode because she's a supportive mom. She's literally my biggest fan. But I was telling my mom this morning that my day with you yesterday was literally the best day I've had in a really long time.
Oh,
like
yeah.
I finished my day. I felt so full of joy, full of life, fully content. I think part of it obviously was you, and you and I had such a good time connecting with each other. And it's been so fun to watch our relationship grow over the last 4 years.
Mm.
But then also just getting time with baby Benny. I love babies. And so to spend like a whole day with him, and he's just such a joy and so easy to hang out with. And he's such a fun little guy. So I think it was the combination of that and then driving up to the mountains and eating all the donuts and the food. And it was just like my whole self felt full in the best of way.
Yeah.
And it came into today. Like I started my day off still feeling that full-hearted joy and full-hearted gratitude and full-hearted contentment from our time with each other yesterday. So thanks for sharing space with me yesterday in person. Virtual is good, but it's always better in person.
Man, it is. It was such a beautiful time, and just face to face and doing things that you love together with the person. So thank you for sharing space with me also. And Benny, I love that you love Benny because I love him too so much.
I love him so much. So for our friend who's listening, Benny is Mariah's child. Mariah is she's like a spiritual daughter to me. She's just been in my life for 4 years, and I just care for her the way I would imagine a mom cares for her kid. Like there's just this unconditional love that I have for Mariah, and I'm like so invested in her best interest. And so now she has a son, and so he's kind of become like now my spiritual grandbaby. So so I love it. And I'm his yaya. And he loves his yaya. But it was so sweet to see how much he was like laughing and giggling and engaging and comfortable with me. And makes me feel like I'm not that bad of a human when animals and babies like me,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because they're so like intuitive to the vibes.
Exactly.
Right. I agree.
Okay, so Bethany's not with us today. She's not feeling well.
Mhm.
So we already said our prayers for Bethany, and we'll look forward to her being here with us next week.
Yes.
Actually, before we jump into the episode, I wanted to give a shout out to somebody
Oh,
because this person has really been engaging with us through our social medias. She's been communicative with me. She's listened to every single episode that we've published and
wow.
she's loving it. And she's sharing how the episodes are impacting her. And I I just love that so much because part of what I'm longing for in everything that we're creating and in everything that we're offering is that we will create genuine connection with the women that are engaging with what we create. I actually really care about the people that we're creating this stuff for. So when they engage with us in some form or fashion, it makes me feel like we're doing something right, and it makes me feel like we're not wasting our time and we're not wasting other people's time, and this is meaningful.
Yeah,
We're
it
we're putting in a lot of work into everything, and so I wanted to shout out to Miranda. Miranda, I know you're listening. Thank you for sharing with us, with me, how what we are creating is impacting your life. I know that there's more than just Miranda that is being impacted. We've gotten comments and I've gotten text messages or DMs from different people. Some of you guys have been sharing on social media and I appreciate that so much. But I know for a fact that Miranda has listened to every single episode. And so I wanted to give her a shout out and just let our friend who's listening know that it really means a lot to hear from you. It really means a lot to see you sharing what we're creating. It really means a lot to feel your engagement and that what we're creating is resonating with you and for you to let us know how. Because everything for me is about relationship. I'm such a highly relational person. And to be able to find a way to connect with one another in this digital world that we live in means the absolute world to me. It keeps putting fuel in my fire to keep going, even though this gets difficult and challenging and feels very laborious at times. So,
yeah.
Miranda, thank you. And to everybody else, thank you. Maybe we'll start doing more shout outs in the future. But for now, we're just going to honor Miranda. You're our very first shout out. So thank you and you're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome for thanking you. Did you ever do that? Thank you. Thank you for thanking me. Thank you for thanking me
Yes.
for thanking
Oh,
you. Okay. So to be honest with you, I had an idea of what I wanted to explore together today, but I'm not quite sure how it's going to morph or evolve or how true to that topic we're going to stay.
okay.
So I I I had this situation happen a few weeks ago. So, for those of you who may not know this, I've been doing the Living Beautifully Life coaching for 5 years. But in this last year, business has been slow. Times have been challenging for a lot of us financially. And I was able to get another part time job. And I work at a yoga studio. So, I know some of my Christian friends might have an issue with that. But there's a lot to it, and we're called to be the light, and we're called to be in the world and not of it, and so I'm good with it. Jesus opened the door for me. I'm so thankful to be at my yoga studio. I love my yoga community. I love the work that I get to do there. I'm the little front desk girl. It's very humble labor. And one one day a few weeks ago, I was working the front desk. I was working my regular weekday shift. And kind of like any time you're in customer service, there's always your regulars. Did you ever work at a coffee shop?
I worked at a boba spot.
So you know, like you kind of had the same people would come in on the same days and get the same thing. Okay. So we have that happening at the yoga studio. So it's my normal day that I work, my normal shift, and the normal regulars are coming in and everybody is lovely. And it's such a drama-free Zen environment, right? And I noticed that one of our regulars she looks really upset and she's standing in the lobby. And so after I get done checking in some students, I kind of motion for her to come and I check in with her. I'm like, hey, is everything okay? And she is peeved. She is so angry because She went into the studio and she went to go lay her mat down, and the the woman that was next to where she wanted to lay her mat down looked at her and said, "Oh, if you don't mind, I'm saving this space for my friend, so do you mind moving down a little bit?"
Mhm.
And that set her off. She felt so angry, she was literally seeing red. So she's telling me how upset she is about this, and I'm trying to understand what is so upsetting about it. Because in my mind, I'm like, "This lady is just saving a spot for her friend. What does it matter if you have to roll over by one person?" But this woman, this particular student who was offended, because that's what it was, she was offended. She was taking it personal. So something inside of her was getting struck. What
Yeah.
she was experiencing was hitting a nerve in her. And no matter how much myself or the owner, the teacher, we all tried to talk with her, we all tried to accommodate with her. Literally, the owner of the studio chased her to her car and was trying to hear her out and validate her experience, but then also invite her back into practice. And she chose not to. She chose to leave. And when I was there a couple of weeks ago, I asked the owner, how did things resolve with her? I haven't seen her in a couple of weeks. And they said she canceled her membership the same day.
Oh, man.
Okay. Listen, we all do that sometimes.
Yeah,
We
def
all take things personally. We all get offended. We all make bigger deals out of things that are not big deals. What she was internally experiencing had nothing to do with what was happening in real time.
yeah,
She was perceiving a threat. She was perceiving a judgment. She was perceiving something. We don't know for sure what it was, but she was perceiving something in that moment that was causing offense within her soul. She
right.
felt like there was an injustice being done to her. And it was so bad that she decided to cancel her membership to a
Wow.
place that she loves and comes to on a weekly basis and has for a while.
Yeah.
So she ended up robbing herself of joy. She robbed herself of something she enjoys because she was offended.
Wow.
And it got me thinking about how easy it is for us to deceive ourselves, how hard it is for us to be honest with ourselves, how rare it is for us to question or challenge or even think critically about what we believe or what we perceive or even what we're feeling. We just take all of these things as if they're real. We don't question them, we don't challenge them, we don't think objectively about them, and how much it not only hurts us, but it hurts our ability to relate with others. And
Oh,
it ultimately robs us of our own healing.
yes.
I think the overarching focus of our conversation today is going to be, why is it so hard to be honest with ourselves sometimes?
Mm, that's a good one. That is good.
Do you have an example of something that you've experienced in your life where actually I can think of something you shared with me yesterday. Do you want to share about how since our last time hanging out, you had the epiphany of not taking things so personally and how it's changed how you're showing up in your marriage?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think we have a lot of married listeners, and that might be a good one for them.
Or the wives. Yeah. So this has happened for me a lot in my marriage. And in the beginning, like probably in the first 2 years of my marriage, I was always so offended and so triggered. And I was always willing to fight my battles and die on the hill almost every single time about something so minor. Like, I'm telling you, it could be just in the way that he looked at me. I was always feeling so attacked. Cry. I would even communicate to him, "Why would you say it like that? Why would you say that about me and my character?" It always felt like such a character attack on my identity. I think that's the thing that we tend to defend most is things that we identify with. But yeah, that was just the reality. Thank thank God it's not like that anymore.
I know from hanging out with you yesterday that you shared it was a conversation that we had a couple months ago and that really shifted things. I'm sure there's a sister listening to this conversation right now and she might be struggling with the same thing in her marriage where she genuinely feels like it's a constant battle, lines are constantly getting crossed, there's constant disconnection and she might not realize that she's personalized because when you're in it, you don't think, "Oh, this is a me problem." You think this is a you problem.
Yeah, yeah,
Why are you looking at me like that? Why are you talking to me like that? Why are you, right? It's all about you until you realize that it's all about me. Oh, no, no, no. It's my perception. It's the meaning that I'm attaching to this. It's my unforgiveness. It's my projected pain from my past. There's a quote that says that we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are.
yeah.
So the more you clear yourself up, the more clearly you're able to perceive reality. So for our sister who might be listening, and maybe it's not in her marriage, maybe it's in a family relationship, maybe it's in a friendship, maybe it's just life in general. Maybe she finds herself getting really offended by a lot of things in life. What was a turning point for you a couple months ago? And then how has it affected things? How are things now?
I would say that the things I took away from our conversation was, first of all, God is the all-knowing Father. He knows what's in my marriage. He knows what's in my heart. He knows what's in his heart. And first of all, trusting God with my husband and, like, talking to God about my husband, but also not coming always from a self-motivated place. That was another thing I took away because a lot of my prayers about my husband were self-centered. Like, "God, why is he doing this to me?" It was just mainly about me, but get you have to get yourself to that place and that heart posture of being concerned for his well-being as well. Because if I want my husband to stop eating all this bad stuff, is it because it's how it's gonna affect me later in life, or is it because I genuinely care about his health
Mm.
and his well-being? So that was the first thing, and then just asking myself those questions about why am I taking this so personally, and then surrendering it to God, allowing Holy Spirit to speak and fill in me the truth, taking my thoughts captive and surrendering it to truth. I mean, it's an active conscious effort that I've been making, but it also helps that I had that heart posture shift, because without that heart posture shift or taking my selfish motives out of the equation, I find it easier for me to practice patience, keep in mind his best interest and what's beneficial for us to grow in relationship and connection. And another thing I took away from that conversation was it's not always about resolving the problem all the time right away at first. It's sometimes it's best to just go and connect, like find your friendship. And I feel like I've really been finding my friendship with my husband. And it's been great. 'Cause I don't feel like if I'm being honest, I was momming. I was like, "Nag, nag, nag. You need to do this. You need to do that." And sometimes it comes up, but I've been having way less breakdowns, even not even for my own sake because I'm giving him to God, but also how am I gonna show up in this marriage with real genuine connection? I'm able to connect with him more, whereas before I'd be super serious and super, like, critical. I have moments, like I'm saying, I'm not fully there, but we're way better than we were in the beginning, maybe the first year or 2. It was rough, but he's really great.
Well, what I'm hearing you say is that in the surrendering to God, that's letting go of the things that you don't have control over. You like
Yeah,
you've been practicing releasing the things that are outside of your control, which is your husband. You don't want to control your husband. You can't control your husband.
yeah,
You don't want to be manipulative. You've become a lot more intentional with what you do have control in, which is how you're showing up and how you're letting things affect you and what you're doing with yourself when you do find yourself in a triggered state. When I hear you say, I'm surrendering to God, I think sometimes people don't fully understand what that looks like. I was just talking with somebody yesterday, and she was like, I struggle with not knowing what's my part, what's God's part. What is self striving versus personal accountability, which were just really good questions. Keep all of your questions coming our way, listeners, because we want to answer those questions and go deeper. But for you, Mariah, when you talk about surrendering, it's okay, I have this thing coming up in me. And instead of allowing this thing to control me, my mindset, my emotions, my reactions, I'm going to take this thing that's coming up inside of me and bring it to the Lord. Because this is another thing that I think sometimes people struggle with is they go, I'm just going to give it to God. I was talking to a client about this last week. We've only been working together for a few months, but she said, this thing came up in me, which is good because she's growing in her self-awareness. So she's able to identify what's coming up in her. And then she said, and then I just gave it to God. And as we kept talking about it, I'm like that's God. It's less about giving things to God and allowing God to get into the thing.
Yeah.
I have a friend who struggles with anxiety and we were talking one day and she said, well, when the anxiety comes, I just pray and I give it to God and I just give it to God and I just give it to God. And I said, okay, but you've been praying and giving this to God for years and you're still not free of anxiety.
Mm,
And I say this with love because I used to struggle with anxiety, but a lot of us are giving things to God that God doesn't want us to give to him. He actually wants to get in it and then get it out of us.
yeah.
But we have to invite him into those conversations. We have to invite him into those painful places. We have to even invite him into some shame sometimes, some things that we don't feel comfortable talking to him honestly about, or we don't want to be honest with ourselves about. I say it all the time. You can only be as honest with God, or you can only be as honest with others as you're willing to be honest with yourself.
So true.
So if there's things that I'm not willing to be honest with myself about, it doesn't matter how much I pray about it, I'm not going to hear God's voice about that issue and I'm going to keep struggling with it.
Right.
And I can justify it, I can blame it on other people or circumstances, I can build up a really good case for it, whatever. But at the end of the day, if there are things that we are struggling with perpetually year after year after year in the same way, because I still struggle with stuff in my life that I've been struggling with for years, but I don't struggle with it in the same way. It's losing its hold on me. It's a practice. It's a lifestyle. It's a
Yeah.
process. It's a journey. I can't reiterate that enough. So there are things that will come up and I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is coming up again. It's time to deal with this again." And it's not this defeated posture of like, "Oh my gosh, again?" It's like, "Okay, there's something more that gets to be worked out this time around. There's grace. So here we go, God. What is it that you want to show me this time?" And little by little, we untangle ourselves from our old patterns, our old coping mechanisms, our dysfunctional belief patterns, and all this kind of stuff. But I think one of the biggest blockers of honesty is shame.
How do you think that works?
Well, you said earlier, we tend to want to defend the things that we most identify with. If I feel like you're attacking my identity, if I feel like you're attacking my essence, if I feel like you're attacking my character, if I feel like there's an attack against that, I will defend it.
Yeah.
So, what we believe about ourselves, w- gosh, we have to believe good things about ourselves
Yeah.
for survival's sake. In order to survive, and this all starts in early childhood, we come into this world so vulnerable and completely dependent on our caregivers. And our caregivers are our very first God. They're our source for everything.
Yeah.
I mean, when you were in your mother's womb, your mother was your source of life. She was your protection. She was your provider. She was your sustainer. She was your strength. She was your first. I'm using the little g for those of you who are not watching. This is not blasphemous. I'm not taking away from the ultimate one true big G God. Just stick with me here. In your own level of conscious understanding, she was your first God. And so there are fundamental needs that are hardwired within our soul and within our spirit and within our biology that we are to have met from our mothers and they're different than the needs that we're to have met from our fathers. And if those needs are met, then we learn that this world is a safe place. I can cry and I can have my need met. Whether my need is to be fed, whether my need is to be comforted emotionally, whether my need is to be comforted physically, right? But my needs are going to be met. This world is safe. I'm important. I'm secure. I'm accepted. Even the emotional, like the way that we look at children and they interpret our facial expressions and our tone and our posture as I'm safe, I'm loved, I'm adored, or I'm not safe. I've done something wrong. It's not okay to be me. A child, in order to survive, needs connection.
Yeah.
They need to feel that their connection with their caregivers is secure. And when there's anything that comes up to threaten that connection, even if it's just a perception, even if it's not reality, even if it's just how they internalize the situation, then they're going to adapt themselves. They're going to adjust themselves in order to maintain that connection. Because if I don't keep connection with you, I die. This is
Yeah.
primal instinct. But what happens is in that phase of early childhood development, that is where all of our subconscious and unconscious programming develops.
Yeah.
And in that phase of development, we are very self-centric beings. Children are very selfish. Benny is not waking up in the middle of the night and thinking to himself, you know what? Mom had a really long day. Maybe I shouldn't cry and wake her up and just let her sleep a little longer.
Yeah. No,
Right?
yeah.
He wakes up, he's hungry, he lets you know. He's like, it's all about me, as it should be. That's what he needs. It's okay. It's okay when you're an infant to be a selfish human being. Absolutely. Be selfish. And this is to put no shame on anybody, but this is facts. There's science behind it. Okay? Study the brain. Study child development. If Benny wakes up at 7 months old in the middle of the night and he is crying because he needs something from you, he needs comfort, he needs presence, he needs food, he needs a blanket, and you ignore him and you think he'll be fine, he just needs to self regulate. A 7-month-old brain is not developed. It doesn't have the capability to self regulate. A
Yeah.
7-month-old brain is fully dependent on co-regulation. So if you've been lied to and you believe, let him cry it out, because there's theories out there that have taught us that before we knew what we know now. Let him cry it out. He'll be fine. He needs to learn how to self-regulate. That the only way a child learns how to self-regulate is with a parent who, for the first 3 to 12 years, like 3 years fully co-regulates, and then from 3 to 12 still co-regulating and teaching them how to self-regulate. A child can't fully self-regulate until they hit the age of 8 to 12. And so when we are withholding the co-regulation from them that they need, we are subconsciously teaching them your needs are not important.
Hmm.
So if I start experiencing that my needs are not important, and remember this, go back and listen to episode 5 if you haven't listened to episode 5, because in episode 5, we talk about the superconscious, the conscious, the subconscious, the unconscious, and how we really live out of that subconscious and unconscious realm. The subconscious and the unconscious realm is really developed in early childhood where we don't have conscious memory, but where all of our fundamental worldview beliefs started to form. What I believe is true about me, what I believe is true about my mom and dad, my first God, what I believe is true about basically those two things, my family and its identity. What I believe is true about me. If I have needs that aren't met, I'm going to internalize that as a child, because we're so self-centric. It's not what's wrong with them. Why are they not this is their responsibility. I mean, Benny wouldn't be like, "What's wrong with my mom? This is her responsibility to come and meet my needs. What's going on with her that she can't come meet my needs?" He's gonna be like, "What's wrong with me that she's not coming to meet my needs?"
Yeah.
Because it's all about me at
Mhm.
that age. That's where they're at. That's where we're at. What's wrong with me that I'm crying and asking for her to come to me and she doesn't wanna come to me? What's wrong with me that she doesn't wanna spend time with me? And there's so many testimonies of people who've done deep inner healing work, and when they really peel it all back, they had early childhood experiences that instilled within their subconscious and unconscious belief system such a deep, deep-seated shame. Because shame is the belief that something is wrong with me,
Yeah.
that makes me unworthy of love, that makes me unworthy of connection, that makes me unworthy of acceptance, that makes me unworthy of belonging, and therefore I'm not safe, and therefore I'm not secure, and therefore I have to become whoever I think I need to be to have the safety and the security and acceptance and belonging and love that I'm literally hardwired for. And
Yeah.
we start morphing ourselves and creating these images of ourselves, these egos of ourselves, these personalities of ourselves to try to make sure that those needs are met.
Yeah. I was gonna ask, how does what you're saying about childhood relate to shame?
So much of our shame, so
Mhm.
much of the shame that we carry within ourselves
Mhm.
is embedded into our coding or programming or subconscious or unconscious parts of our souls
Mhm.
in early childhood.
Right, and then we carry that with us into adulthood. So it's like, I mean, for everybody, I mean, everybody needs to do that work in order to get to a place of health and dismantling that shame.
Right. But in order to do that work, we first have to be honest with ourselves. And shame is one of the biggest barriers to us being able and willing to be honest with ourselves. Because shame will often blame or pity itself. Woe's me, like Eeyore. Woe's me. So what's wrong with me? Nobody likes me. And that's not solution oriented. That's not freedom either. That's not healing either. So it's like the two extremes. It's like we get angry and we get blaming and we project onto others, or we go into this deep internalization where you and Bethany love to use this language. It's probably from your generation, romanticize.
I was gonna say, yeah. Yep.
You romanticize the shame and you own it and you sulk it through your whole life and, woe's me. And so, yes, but I think shame is a human experience. Every single one of us carry a measure of shame. How we project it, how we carry it, how we allow it to affect us and inform us varies. But every single person in in their inner being carries a measure of shame until they're able to acknowledge it, identify it, and then learn how to bring in the healing required to release it. Because you
Yeah.
don't have to live as a carrier of shame. You don't have to let shame control your life. But until you consciously choose not to, it is to some
Yeah.
degree. And that goes back to the 7 levels of awareness and people's lack of self-awareness and all that kind of stuff. Go listen to episode 5. It was a good one. Episode 5 was a really good one. Thoughts on that?
Oh, I was gonna say there is a difference between shame and healthy guilt.
Yeah, there's such a thing as healthy shame. 100% healthy shame. Unhealthy shame is I am wrong. Something is fundamentally flawed with me. I am a disgrace.
Mhm.
That's unhealthy shame. And it produces death. It produces destruction.
Yeah.
Healthy shame is what I've done is bad, or this is a part of me that I need to take ownership of and I need to grow this in my life. If you are a parent and you are struggling in your parenting and you are getting pushed beyond your own personal limits, and there's no shame in this. There's a reason why this is happening. but you're finding yourself exploding with your children from time to time. Feeling like a bad human being because of that, unhealthy shame. Recognizing that what you're doing is wrong and you want to do something about it, healthy shame.
Right. Yeah, because once you take that ownership and if you know your vision goal of who you want to show up as or who you wanna grow into as a wife, as a mom, as a friend, whoever, then you can take those action steps to clean up messes that you make because 'cause we're
Yeah.
humans. It's inevitable, and so I think that's very important too, moving forward in growth and health instead of staying in the unhealthy shame where that tells you, "No, it's their fault. Don't apologize. Wait until you get an apology," or, like, wait for them to clean up your mess.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the other thing about shame is pride and shame are two sides of the same coin. So, where some people might really struggle with like shame, other people might present themselves as more prideful. But when you really start peeling the layers back, what is under the pride is shame.
Yeah.
Even narcissists, which are some of the least treatable people, which by the way, 11% of the population is narcissists. So stop calling the people in your life narcissists because they're probably not narcissists. But we have no business labeling people. People who are diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, when you really do the work of peeling back their stories and how things have impacted them, what you get to is they live with deep shame. They are some of the deepest carriers of shame in our population. And because of how deep the shame runs, they're driven to overcompensate and act like they just don't care and develop all these coping mechanisms to try to feel unaffected by things and to control and to manipulate. But ultimately there's this deep diversion to their own deep, deep, deep shame.
Yeah.
So that's an extreme, but it's a shame thing. Um, I was thinking about how it's so hard to be honest with ourselves about things sometimes because of shame, because of fear. Oftentimes the things that we're afraid of, if we really peel it back, it also comes back to shame, you know? Because the shame is about the identity. It's about the self, what we believe about ourself. It's lies that we believe about ourselves that are rooted in wounds that haven't yet been healed, basically. And so if the truth is what sets us free, I was curious about that. Like, so we deceive ourselves, we defend ourselves, we blame others to justify ourselves. We do all these things to try to protect ourselves from being honest with ourselves about the shame that we feel. But the only way to get free from the shame is to be honest about it. It's to face it. I love to say, you can't overcome what you're not willing to face, and you cannot heal what you're unwilling to be honest about. You remember I used to say that to you all the time.
It's engraved.
Mariah, what is this really about? Right?
Yeah.
Because we just don't know how to be honest with ourselves because that self deception is a coping mechanism. And we have to learn and develop the skills to be able to really face ourselves and sit with ourselves and be with all of these parts of ourselves that we've been running from and trying to repress and avoid and ignore and minimize and justify. But in John 8:32, Jesus says, if you hold to my teachings, you'll know the truth, and the truth is what's going to set you free. So I had to look it up in the Greek. And it's the word aletheia. Probably saying it wrong because again, I'm not Greek, but I try. And so when I looked up the word aletheia, some other great adjectives that you can use to best understand what that Greek word means, other than truth, which is the biblical translation of it, but the more accurate translation of it is unconcealedness, unhiddenness, disclosing something previously hidden, or unveiling. And I was like, isn't that interesting? Because that's ultimately what the truth does.
Mhm.
And that is why the truth ultimately sets us free, because it's the things that are hidden in the darkness that keep us in bondage, that keep us oppressed, that continue to rob us of our peace, of our joy, of our presence, of our hope, of our faith, of our inner confidence, of our strength. But in order to overcome those things, and not try to overcompensate for them, but to overcome them, we have to let the veil drop. We have to let them be exposed. We have to let them come into the light. And so it got me thinking about the very first time that humans covered themselves up. This is how my brain works. I'm like, oh, truth is an uncovering. Okay. When did humans first cover themselves? Genesis 3, Adam and Eve in the garden, perfect paradise, perfect harmony, perfect oneness with each other, with God, with creation. Beautiful day, walking in the garden, 2 trees in the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I like to call it the tree of judgment, the knowledge of good and evil, judgment, the tree of eternal life. God did not tell Eve, but God told Adam, eat from the tree of life. Don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because if you eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you're going to die. Adam and Eve chilling in a garden. Serpent comes to Eve. Hey, did God really say you can't eat from any of the trees in the garden? That's an over-exaggeration of truth, right? She takes the bait. She engages in the dialogue. She goes, no, he didn't say that we can't eat from any of the trees. He just said that we can't eat from this one. Because if we eat from this one, we're going to die. The devil goes, you're not going to die, calling God a liar. God knows. God is a deceiver. He's deceiving you, says the deceiver. God knows that if you eat from this tree, you're going to be just like him. Well, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? God's pretty perfect. Surely being just like him can't be a bad thing. Except for the fact that in that moment, she forgot the reality that she was already like him. Because in a chapter before, we see that she was created in his image and likeness. She was already like God.
Mm-hmm.
She forgets. She has a momentary blips and forgets who she really is. The devil comes along and says, oh, you need this to be that. You need something outside of yourself to be that. She goes, I want to be that. I want to be like God. She looks at the tree. She sees that it looked delicious. She goes, she takes the fruit. She takes a bite. Guess what? Nothing happens yet. Interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
She goes to Adam. Hey, Adam, try this fruit. Adam chooses to listen to Eve instead of God. See, Eve chose to listen to the devil instead of her husband. Adam chose to listen to his wife instead of God. And when Adam breaches his covenant, his agreement, his obedience to God, that's when both of their eyes were opened up. And it says that they saw that they were naked and they felt shame and they took fig leaves and they covered themselves up.
Yeah.
Something that really stands out to me about this is the fact that nothing in their situation changed.
Right.
Nothing in their world changed. Their perception changed.
Yeah.
They were already naked. They
Right.
didn't see anything wrong with that. And all of a sudden, when their eyes were opened and they saw things differently, they saw that they were different from one another. There was shame in that. And so they covered up the parts of themselves that they felt shameful in, which was the parts of themselves that they realized were different than one another. Then, as the day goes on, Jesus is walking through the garden, whistling his sweet song, and calls out to Adam and says, where are you? Because Adam and Eve went into hiding. They're like, oh, Jesus is coming. We don't want him to see us naked. He made them naked. He knows they're naked. He doesn't have a problem with their nakedness. They go and they hide in like a bush. And then Jesus is like, Adam, where are you? And Adam says, we hid because we didn't want you to see our nakedness. And then Jesus is like, who told you you were naked? Did you eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? So then the whole story unfolds from there. What I want to unpack is 3 words. And then I want to talk about one moment in Jesus's life. Okay. So the word for shame, that Adam and Eve felt shame in Hebrew, it means to fall into disgrace. So they were in grace. There was
Mm.
grace over their lives.
Yeah.
And then they fell into disgrace. The word covering, when they created the fig leaf covering and they covered the parts of themselves, male and female, that were different from each other, is the Hebrew word hagor. One of the meanings for this word hagor is actually armor. And I thought, isn't that interesting? After they felt shame, they armored up.
Mm.
Isn't that what we do?
Oh, yeah.
That's what happened with this lady at the yoga studio. Something in her had a reaction. There was an injustice done, but the reason why she was acting that way, because even if there's Jesus had a lot of injustice done to him, and he didn't have a cancel culture about him. In fact, the one time that we see Jesus turning tables, it was a premeditated response. It was not an emotional reaction. He never canceled people out. So when we are having those types of big reactions to things, it's probably you tattletaling on yourself that you're feeling some measure of shame and you're trying to overcompensate for it by projecting or blaming or shaming the person that you're feeling that shame being triggered from. And I just want to remind you, when we get triggered, it has nothing to do with what's going on outside of us and everything to do with what's going on inside of us and the meaning that we're attaching to what's going on inside of us. It's just like Adam and Eve when their eyes were opened and they perceived that they were naked. It was their perception of reality that changed. It wasn't reality.
Yeah.
So when we experience shame, we armor ourselves up with all of these masks that we wear, all of these coping mechanisms that we use because we don't want to feel that shame. We don't want to be perceived as weak, we don't want to be perceived as vulnerable, we don't want people to think less of us. So we overcompensate in some way, and the ultimate goal is to hide
Yeah.
parts of ourselves that we feel shameful about. So I looked up the word hid because Adam and Eve felt shame. They covered themselves up and then they hid. And the Hebrew word hide is chava or chava, but its meaning could be withdraw or to thicken or harden.
Mm.
Isn't that what happens to our hearts when we get offended, when we experience shame, even when we experience pain? We have this human natural instinct to harden ourselves, to callous ourselves against it. And so our hearts become hard against the thing that's causing pain. And we can become these hardened women. And that's something that's so popular in our culture, is to just be unbothered. I'm unbothered. I'm unbothered. Honey, you're probably hardened. Like if
Yeah.
your goal in life is to live unbothered, you're going to have to callus that heart up real thick.
Mhm.
And the danger with that is if you callus that heart up real thick, you're not going to be able to connect with anybody, let alone yourself, let alone your higher power, let alone the people that you love and want to be loved by.
Yeah. That it's not a bad thing to want to be loved.
And it's not a bad thing to be bothered, but the
Yeah.
question is, what's bothering you about it? Again, most of the time it has less to do with the outside world and more to do with the meaning you're attaching to what's going on in the outside world. It's it's engaging in the art of self-confrontation. It's learning how to practice that compassionate inquiry of getting curious about what you're experiencing and not judging it or being reactive or projecting. Anytime we're projecting anything onto anyone else, it's you tattletaling on yourself that you're not doing the self-reflection work.
Yeah.
Self-reflect first. Always check yourself first. And you have to be committed to being honest with yourself. If you're going to live this beautiful life, if you're going to live a life of wholeness, completeness, freedom, Unveiling is required. Truth is required. If we're called to be the light of this world, we have to let the light of Jesus, the light of truth, illuminate every shadowy, shameful part of our souls. We have to let that happen. And it requires courage. It requires braveness. It requires boldness. But we can't get there if we're not willing to be honest with ourselves. Two things, and then we're done. I went to Ireland last year on a service trip. We had like a day in Dublin before we went to do our service. And on the first day that I was there, I was with one of one of the girls that I was traveling with, and we had this map. Now, it wasn't like a thorough map. It was like a tourist map. So tourist maps just kind of have the main streets and all the tourist attractions, but they don't have the detail of the city at hand. And I didn't have any Wi-Fi access. So I didn't have like MapQuest or Google Maps, or I didn't have phone access. So we walked from our hotel all the way to where we wanted to go, this touristy destination that we wanted to go. We got there, we realized you had to buy tickets like days in advance. We couldn't go into this museum. So we're like, that's fine. So we start walking, and probably like 20 minutes into, we've been walking for like an hour and a half, 2 hours at this point. And we suddenly realized we don't know where we are. We don't know where we are. We know we can look at the map and we can see where we want to go. But because there's such a lack of detail on this tourist map, we don't know where we're at on the tourist map. And
Mm.
the Holy Spirit spoke to me so clearly in that moment. And he said, this is the healing journey. You cannot get to where you want to go if you don't know where you're starting. We love to focus so much on the end destination, on, oh, I just want my life to be like this. I just want to be loving. I want to be patient. We like to focus on all the fluffy, feel good stuff. But you can't get to the fluffy, feel good stuff until you're honest about where you actually are at. You need to be honest about where you're starting from if you have any hope of getting where you want to go. And that means dismantling the things that come up and want to protect you and defend you and deflect any form of shame. Getting honest about your coping mechanisms, getting honest about your masks, getting honest about your shame, getting honest about your pain, getting honest about your trauma, and not owning it and identifying as it, but bringing it into the light, bringing truth into those places, bringing healing into those places so that you can be free from it. So the
Mm.
last thing I'm going to say is this. There's this moment in Jesus's life, the week leading up to him going to the cross. And he's walking into Jerusalem with his disciples, and he's hungry, and he looks at this fig tree and he's like, I'm really hungry. I'm going to go eat some figs. And so the Bible literally says it was not fig season, Mariah. Okay. The figs were not in season. Okay. So Jesus walks up to this fig tree out of season. There's not according to the laws of nature, there should not be any figs on this tree. And he walks up to the fig tree and he gets upset that there's no figs on this tree. And he curses the tree and says, no one's going to eat of your fruit again. And he keeps walking with his disciples. Let's just pause for a second on that. I was so confused reading that. I'm like, why would God be mad at a tree for not producing fruit in its off season? Like, that doesn't feel kind. That doesn't feel reasonable. Like, I don't understand that at all. We're going to come back to it. The next day, Jesus is walking with his disciples, and Peter notices that fig tree that Jesus cursed and said, nobody's going to eat of your fruit again, has completely withered and died.
Mm.
I was sitting with this story. I was like, I don't understand this, because I literally just ate a fig a few weeks ago. Like, clearly fig trees are still producing fig fruit. Like, Jesus said no one's going to eat of this fruit again, but I just ate a fig. What the heck? Like, what happened in this story? And as I was seeking the Lord for revelation in this story, this is what I believe the Lord said. He said, Tanya, what did Adam and Eve cover themselves up with? They covered themselves up with fig leaves. The fig was symbolic of the fruit of shame. So
Mm.
when Jesus looks at the fig tree and says, I curse you, No one is going to eat from your fruit again. He's not literally speaking about the fig fruit. He's speaking about the fruit of shame. There is a verse in scripture that says there is no shame or condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. If we are true followers of Jesus, if we are the daughters of God, then shame has no legal access to our hearts, to our minds, to our bodies, to our realm. And for us to befriend it, or for us to tolerate it, or for us to come into agreement with it, or for us to romanticize it, there's absolutely no reason for us to be engaging with shame in any way. In fact, 10 years ago, I declared war on shame in my life. And I would say that I don't feel like shame at this point in my life, Mariah, has a stronghold on me anymore. I can
Yeah.
identify when I start to feel shame and I can work through it really quick. But as far as letting shame control me, even at a subconscious level, like I've removed myself so far from it at this point. This didn't happen overnight. It wasn't a one-time thing for me. But I've created so much distance between me and shame that when it does enter into my sphere, I can catch it and I can work it out. I don't come into agreement with it. I don't partner with it. I don't let it limit or restrict or cause me to react most of the time. I'm not perfect. I'm human. I'm only 40. I still have more than half of my life to live. Do you have any question or anything you want to add to anything?
I was in the way that you parted yourself from shame was through that identity work, correct? Yeah, that's what I was gonna add.
Yeah, it was through learning how to renew my mind. It was through learning how to guard my heart, which is learned to tend to the emotional landscape of my inner being. It was through learning my identity, who God says I am, beyond my personality and life, how life has formed and fashioned me. It was doing the inner work of little by little, of every time I got triggered, learning how to look inward, learning how to dismantle the limiting mindsets that I had, the cognitive distortions that I have, my own personal biases that I had, learning how to dismantle and detangle myself from all of that stuff so that what was left was truth. Because the truth is in there.
Yeah.
It's all in there. It wasn't a journey of becoming. For me, it has truly been a journey of unbecoming. I just had to unbecome everything that I was never meant to be so that I could be who God sent me here to be.
Yeah.
But like the point of this is, I mean, we're early days, we're 6 episodes in. There is no shame. And we talked about this in another episode. Oftentimes we'll feel conviction, but if we house shame, that conviction will morph into condemnation and we'll feel criticized or condemned. We have to, again, check ourselves. What is it? What am I projecting onto this experience? Just like Adam and Eve, it was their perception of reality that changed. Reality itself did not change. So, what am I projecting? How am I perceiving this situation unclearly? Clean up your filters so that you can see more clearly. It's got to be done. And I do really badly want to do an episode on our paradigms, our beliefs, and our opinions, and the difference between our knowledge and our beliefs, and how do we confront those in a really loving and compassionate way? How do we become women who question things? How do we become women who can engage the art of self confrontation? Because we have to unveil the things that want to remain hidden within our souls if we are ever to arise into the fullness of who we were put on this planet to become. All right, my friends, we just love you so much. We appreciate you for being here with us, for sharing this space for us, for pulling up a seat at the table and being a part of the conversation. I know that you don't have a present voice in this conversation, but you are, from what I'm hearing from some of you, it is really creating an invitation for you to reflect and for you to think about, yourself. So you are being a part of the conversation by how you're internalizing it and what you're allowing these conversations to stir up and spark within you. So we would love to hear from you. We would love to hear what your thoughts are on these episodes, how they're affecting you, how they're resonating with you. If you have questions and you want to know more about something that we skimmed over or that we mentioned in an episode, we would love to connect with you. So Please leave comments. Please engage with us on social media. Bethany's killing it on social media right now. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok. And yeah, engagement is huge, connection is huge. So you were
Yeah.
created to create and to connect, not just to consume.
Amen.
I'll leave us with that one for today. See you next week.
Adios.
Adios, amigas. Ciao for now.